Perfect. Now, Mr. Fehlinger, in Europe, there seems to be two conflicts. One is the kinetic, where the Russians used arms, destructive ways to attempt to subdue the Ukrainian population. But the second conflict was at the economic level. There was an attempt to stop Putin's war machine, as it's called, and the best way it was thought was through an economic blockade, sanctions. However, some countries chose to ignore human rights and ignore these sanctions and kind of do what they believed was best for them, irrespective of the consequences of others. Now, do you believe India would A, fall into this category, and B, for those countries that do such acts which encourage violence against civilians in Europe, what should be the appropriate steps Europe and the Western world should take?
Look, we have in Europe also division internally, like all democracies. Some people are maybe even a bit softer on Russia, but nobody in Europe, nobody relevant in Europe is really supporting Russia, because nobody supports genocide or such kind of dictatorial regime. This is very much the fringe. We have some countries which unfortunately are, there is a specific kind of political movement. It's called populism. This is in Hungary, in Slovakia, some countries where unfortunately Russian influence is dramatically high. How does that work? Because half of Europe was occupied by the Soviet Union until 1991 or 1990, when liberation came and the Cold War was won by our side. It was that huge infrastructure, especially in the energy sector, was built by the Soviet Union to supply their allies in the Warsaw Pact. That means they have built the gas infrastructure, they have built the nuclear infrastructure, they have built the energy transport infrastructure towards Eastern Germany, towards Hungary, towards even Austria, and that was very lucrative. One of the reasons why the Soviet Union was a superpower in the 1970s and could wage global wars and could support India actually from 71 on was because we have been so generous in Europe to send all our good foreign exchanges towards Russia via the gas pipelines. And also that was basically the main income for foreign exchange from the 1970s on, when the pipelines have reached Austria and Eastern Germany. So this infrastructure still exists. And it's true, after taking all these countries in, because the European Union has taken over 100 million people. That's maybe not a lot in the Indian context, but that's a lot of people, in fact. Yeah, we have taken them in the European Union from Poland, from Lithuania, from Bulgaria, from Romania. It's 100 million people, and 60 more million are waiting for being members. Yeah, and situation is then it was very expensive, of course. We could have transitioned the infrastructure faster, like ending all Russian nuclear power in Eastern Europe. Yes, would have been much faster. We could have also done the energy transition much faster. Yes, it was, but it was very expensive to do it. And so that was one of the reasons we didn't pay too much to Eastern Europe, because we have already spent a lot. And so there was not so much the appetite for such generosity to end all the Soviet infrastructure in Eastern Europe. Yeah. Now, for example, in the war of Ukraine, basically all the Eastern European leftover military infrastructure is sent to Ukraine and it's destroyed there in the battle. So it's over with the military infrastructure. And we also have the energy infrastructure. We will now totally decouple from Russia over time. Some countries don't do that.
My question is though, countries like India that are helping the Russians circumvent the sanctions, what should be the actions taken by Western countries against those countries?
We should boycott India. We should really have a serious dialogue with India. Let's make it nicer. Okay. With India, I'm very angry because we made a lot of offers to have a free trade agreement with India, to put in the OECD, to be very friendly with India, the Americans especially, in the so-called Quad. So we made a lot of offers to India. But what is Modi doing? Dancing with Putin at all these events during the war and celebrating BRICS like he's the leader of the development world against the West. Yeah, if he wants to be like that, yeah, I'm very angry on that one. Yeah. So we have to talk very tough to India and say, if you circumvent our sanctions with Russia, if you are basically against us, yeah, then we are against you, and there will be no free trade agreement. There will be no opening of our labor markets. There will be no cooperation with India, and we will not sign all these agreements. And you can have good fun with Mr. Putin, who is totally declining, and you will lose all this legitimacy which Mr. Modi has built in some aspects in the last years. And we will not give you a UN Security Council seat. And I will personally also support the Sikh independence, yeah, because that's much better to have more states instead of India than to have one India which is allied with Russia.
So now, turning to India, at the G20, India refused to invite Zelensky, even though Canada asked as well, right before the G20 summit. They nevertheless still refused to invite Zelensky to it, where maybe there could have been a chance for dialogue or a chance for resolving some of the issues afflicting the world. What message do you think India wanted to send to the world by denying Zelensky the opportunity to attend the G20 summit?
Yeah, that was very terrible move. Yeah, that was outrageous. Yeah, I'm actually totally against the G20 in that format. Yeah, why to have Mr. Lavrov hanging around? Mr. Lavrov is lying in every single sentence he says something. Why he is invited? Mr. Zelensky is a democratically elected leader of a free European country, and actually quite a big one, Ukraine, an industrial power. So G20 is very unfair. Inviting a country like Russia, which is breaking all the rules in the world, yeah. In which world you can attack a neighboring country and get away with it, yeah.
Now,
All our world rules are meant to prohibit that after the Second World War for that reason. And Russia may go there, but Zelensky not. This is an outrage. And as India has made these decisions, yeah, I'm very much opposed to giving India more space on the global place, especially because India wanted to have a UN Security Council seat, and I supported that in the past. I no longer support that. And let's really discuss the situation of the Indian reality. Let's find out there's a lot of things very wrong, even killing opposition leaders in Canada. And let's work for a different form of political organization on the Indian subcontinent. And let's say yes to Khalistan.
yes, that's. I mean, the audience here would be very agreeable with that statement. But turning to now to Mr. Nijjer's assassination, uh, India is alleged to have, and many Sikhs believe without any reservation, but nevertheless, internationally, it's alleged that they assassinated a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. Now, what does that one A say about India as a country that abides by international norms, and B, what does it say about the safety and security of Sikhs living within India if India is willing to go so far as to target Sikhs abroad in foreign countries?
Yeah, that's a complete outrage. Yeah? And, I didn't follow the case, honestly, at the beginning in June. But when the Canadian Parliament approved it and it was a big topic, then I learned about this. And, then I understood, India is seemingly learning the methods of the suppression of the opposition from Russia and China. In Russia, this is everyday happening that they kill opposition leaders outside, and they have tried it with poison gas in the UK. They have killed people from Chechnya in Austria, in Germany, and in other places in the world. And so this is basically a kind of a BRICS internal workshop, and these BRICS meetings where they exchange the best stories how to really kill opposition leaders in our Western jurisdictions. And that's completely unacceptable. That's completely unacceptable. And that says a lot about the status of the so-called biggest democracy of the world. India is seemingly not. India has gone rogue. And that must be then have also consequences. And I'm not alone in that one. Also, the last week, The Economist was making very much the case. If India using this kind of brutal Russian-style assassinations of opposition leaders in a Western democracy like Canada, that means absolutely that we have to change the tech and strategy, and we have to confront India and also to support. That's my position here. I propose then also to discuss the structural integrity of India, and let's also encourage the new states which have a big historic case. And why not to have a free Khalistan? We have also a free Kosovo free Ukraine, and they work much better than what was before.
Yeah. Now, turning to India's declaration that it's the biggest democracy in the world. The Sikhs in Punjab had their own independent country for about roughly 100 years, and in about 1849, it was annexed by the British. Now, the Sikhs have come forward and said that we wish to resolve this matter of Punjab through a democratic referendum. And India, as it presents itself as the biggest democracy of the world, one would think they would be amicable to a democratic referendum to resolve the question of the future status of Punjab. Yet India's labeled this movement terrorism, has begun assassinating those who advocate for a peaceful democratic referendum, and is trying to suppress it within its own territory and abroad. What do you think this says about India?
Yes, it's very terrible, actually. As I said already, it says a lot of negative things about India, and I'm very worried. So I think of course, I don't encourage terrorism, and I have to call as well everybody to go for a peaceful process of making the case and convincing also the Indian public, but also your own electorate, but also the global public, and that this case is a just and a fair way forward for freedom of Khalistan. How does that work? You have to copy exactly what worked in ex-Yugoslavia and in the Soviet Union. Convince the world that you are a viable state, that you have the historic right for independence, that you have economic governance opportunity, that you will be sustainable, and also that you can secure your borders, that you will have clear borders, and that you want to have a peaceful cooperation with all your neighbors in the future. And this will be the conditions, and also then make very clear that you want to be part of the Western free world order, and everybody will welcome you. And that's basically the way forward. And then you have to put the blame on India that they, for example, don't allow organized independence referendum, which they should. And then you have to, of course, convince the world that you will be a multi-ethnic, a democratic, a multi-party, and a human rights respecting state, which is open for all the people who live there. So no kind of religious dominated, ethnic dominated kind of concept which nobody will endorse, but similar like Kosovo, which is very much built on exactly that one, an international team which is writing a constitution, an international team which is helping in the transition, to invite also international observers to your elections, and to go on and make this case continuously, and also to make it very clear that you will be sitting as a Western style free democratic state in the middle of the Indian and the north of the Indian continent, and you want to be living very peacefully together with the rest of ex-India and with Pakistan and other countries in the world. And if you go like that, you will have also by time build the audience and also support for your independence.